Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, All In Health and Wellness. If you're looking for a health coach, you're looking for a sports performance coach, you're looking for nutrition guidance, like for instance, a meal by meal plan that will help you understand how to eat. It will teach you how to eat, and it will give your body, your cells, the proper nutrition to feel great and be able to perform at your best, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally. If you're looking for those things, you're looking for the key to improve your sports performance, both from a nutrition standpoint and an exercise physical standpoint and a mental standpoint as you approach your athletic event. All In Health and Wellness is able to help in these areas. Go to allinhealthandwellness.com and you'll find the contact information for how to get in touch with them and get started on the plan that will improve your life. Well, Julio, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Excellent, Jerry. Yes, I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So you, as the CEO of bioaccess, y'all do some pretty interesting things in the medical world in looking at everything that you're involved in. Before we get into all that, like what spurred you to say, I want to be a part of this?
Well, the genesis of bioaccess, Jerry, is really the University of Miami. And more specifically is the work that my brother Pedro, and I'm going to segue onto Pedro's story before I come back to the University of Miami, because it's really fundamental for the story of bioaccess. And to answer your question, Pedro and I grew up in Colombia and settled in the US about 40-something years ago, right after we finished college. And he graduated from medical school, and I graduated from engineering school, electrical engineering. And I worked in telecom and networking for many years, big companies, Lucent, Nortel. I got my MBA in the Boston area. Pedro got into research at Harvard. And then he went to Case Western University to do internal medicine, and then went back to Harvard to do cardiology and then interventional cardiology at the Harvard Medical School at the Beth Israel Medical Center. And then he transitioned to the University of Miami after his fellowship training in Boston and became an assistant professor at the University of Miami. And that's when he met his mentor, Dr. William O'Neill, who is also a star in this story, because Dr. William O'Neill, Jerry, is considered one of the top interventional cardiologists in the country and probably in the world. So Dr. O'Neill became Pedro's leader and mentor, father, many things combined into one, and boss as well. And O'Neill is very popular in the medical device, cardiovascular startup space, innovation space, very popular in San Francisco, in Boston, Minneapolis, areas where there's a lot of medical innovation. And he is always, or very often asked to be an advisor, a clinical advisor for medical device startups that are developing advanced cardiovascular technologies. And he brought Pedro along to those opportunities, and Pedro and him travel around the world. They advise many companies in preclinical animal testing and clinical human testing. And that's when they realized, Jerry, that startups in the United States struggle when they hit that milestone of validating the device in animals, and they are ready to validate the device in humans. And they hit a wall in the United States. In other words, they face so many challenges in the country that forces many of them to look overseas, to explore options in other countries. Eastern Europe, all the way east to Kazakhstan. I mean, far places in Central Asia.
Yeah.
They go to, and of course, Czech Republic, Ukraine before the war, Poland, places like that.
Yeah.
And they also go to Australia and New Zealand for this type of work, which is called in the industry first in human or early validation or early feasibility clinical research, which is the first validation on live patients that the device has.
Yeah.
So, or the molecule, I mean, it applies also for new drugs.
Sure.
So, New Zealand, Australia are popular destinations, and more recently, Latin America. Pedro and O'Neill, they both speak Spanish. They both have Latin American backgrounds.
Right.
The University of Miami is in Miami. Miami is, is the hub of Latin America, it's the capital city of Latin America.
Right.
And the university is well connected all over the region through different investigators that have come to the university to get training and then go back to their home countries. So it has a large network of investigators in the region. So I'm referring to the work that Pedro and O'Neill did between 2008 and 2013, 14 or so. That's kind of the range. Okay. And that's really the work that set the foundation for bioaccess, because they were doing all these first-in-human work very informally, just in a small office inside the university's international department, international patient office. And they are not a CRO. I mean, they're not a contract research organization. They're not really a research center. They're just an international patient office that was dealing with the logistics of coordinating the travel of these investigators to Colombia and Paraguay, all of these countries.
Yeah.
And they saw that there was a lot of volume. There was a lot of opportunities that were handling for research, and they decided to create a company outside of the university, and that's bioaccess.
Gotcha.
So, to answer your question more specifically, and I'm sorry for giving you all this context, but it's important to understand. The answer I'm going to give you is that Pedro called me one day and said, Julio, I'm doing this first-in-human medical device work. I wasn't even able to spell the word medical device at that time. So I didn't understand what he was telling me, but I got into the details of it, and I started helping them with some logistical matters. And then Pedro said, Julio, I think you should be the CEO of the company and just take it from here. Here's the bank account. Here's the couple of contracts that we have. Just run with it and see what you can do with it. And fast forward, almost 20 years later, bioaccess is now a leading medical device CRO, contract research organization for first-in-human clinical trials. And we have operations in about 10 countries in Latin America. We're expanding to Australia. We're expanding to Eastern Europe. And we are about 40, 50 employees in total, including contractors and all that.
Awesome. So why is that? And I think that the average person probably doesn't understand when it comes to, they may hear like, oh, the healthcare system in the US is above everybody else's when it comes to technology or things like that. And yeah, it rates really high every year.
Yes.
But there's still opportunities elsewhere where things are cutting edge. Right.
Yes.
And that's sort of where you're trying to get things, get things to move faster, because one thing that people may not know is the FDA is pretty slow.
Yes, exactly. Right? That's why these companies go overseas.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, we need to go in it, because they may be, too stringent. They may not be. That's a different conversation. But yes, there's guidelines and restrictions in place to make sure that things are safe.
Yeah, exactly.
But like you sort of alluded to earlier, is like sometimes those things take forever to get through in the US, whether it's bureaucracy or finances or any of those other things. And like you can go to Latin America or Australia or somewhere else and go through those things so much faster.
Oh, yes.
Right. And get that data.
With the same rigor, with the same ethical and quality standards.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what, and then you bring that over here. Right?
Exactly.
Once you have some data, then you can come back and exactly. Fast track things through on the FDA side, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's a great point, because the challenges that these companies face, Jerry, are not only at the FDA level. Especially now, there are even more challenges at the FDA, less employees,
Right.
more bureaucracy, whatever. But also on the patient recruitment side of things, there are challenges there. Patients don't want to subject themselves to very risky procedure,
Right.
right? So they need to have some safeguards in place before they are recruited into a trial like this,
Yeah.
because patients can die sometimes. And I mean, and the healthcare system in the United States works. Well, I mean, it's not probably the best in the world, but it works.
Yeah.
People have access to the system one way or another.
Right.
So it's difficult to recruit patients. That's what I'm saying. That's the message I'm conveying in the United States.
Yeah.
It's also difficult to recruit investigators, believe it or not. You imagine if you're a small startup, 3 people. Your team is just 3 people. You have $1 million in the bank just to finance your first in-human trial. And then you knock on the door of HCA, for example, one of the largest hospital systems in the United States and probably in the world.
Yeah.
And the bureaucracy, I mean, you have to be on 20 meetings to agree on one big meeting, right? So that's usually how it works. And then the IRB approval process has to be in their IRB because they want to have control. And the IRB takes forever because they don't want to subject their they don't want to have the reputation of having a dead patient in a trial. So it's just too much. So it's just difficult to navigate this hospital system. Not to mention the high cost for a startup. So imagine the startup, I mean, low resources, they're counting pennies and paying $100,000 for each patient for one procedure where you can do the same procedure in Colombia for $20,000. So, right? So there's a big cost saving, a big difference. So that's why all these combination of factors, Jerry, make these companies go overseas on top of the FDA uncertainties.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's something that people that have not had, the P&L responsibility at a business, or they're not an entrepreneur going like, if I don't have money coming in today, I'm not paying bills. Like people that don't have that responsibility sometimes don't understand like why would I go over there? Well, it's because if I can cut out 6 months of waiting for a meeting.
Yes, exactly.
To actually go, because I'm not bringing in any money if this is in a trial situation, right? Like
it's a startup. It's not a revenue generating company. Actually, they burn money. That's how it's called. The burn rate is like $40,000, $50,000 or more, $100,000 every month, paying employees, paying services, whatever, test, rent.
Just to find out if the device or whatever it is going to work.
Exactly. Right? And yes, and also you have investors bringing on your net because, I mean, guess where that money is coming? I mean, the $1 million that they have in the bank it came from angel investors, venture capital investors, or friends and family. I mean, everybody's an investor looking for a return, and they want the return at least 10x. 10x. That's usually what they want. 10x as soon as possible. So the founder, the CEO, the one who is pitching to the investors, they need to show the investors a timeline with milestones, a business plan, right? With certain dates. Where they're going to hit those milestones and the money they need for each one of those milestones, right? That's a common sense business plan. And if you don't deliver on those milestones, the investors will be like, I mean, this is fraud. You're not promising you're not delivering on your promises. I need my money back. You're taking too long. You're going to take my money and bring it, put it somewhere else, whatever. So, or you are not going to get traction to raise more funds later. So it's just a difficult situation. And also it's important for the audience to understand that these companies are created, Jerry, to be sold, to be acquired by Medtronic, Boston Scientific, Johnson & Johnson. Those are the companies that buy these little startups. And the sooner they buy them, the better it is for the investors, right? Right? The faster they get a return on their investment. And the faster it is for Medtronic and the other big guys to have competitive, innovative products in their portfolio, right? And and they can differentiate themselves versus the others. So yeah, it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
If we do the development of these devices very fast, and the one who benefits the most is the patient, because they're going to have access to innovative technologies in the United States.
Right. Right. Well, in a big piece, and one of the things that that I've always known this is like you talk to people and somebody says like, oh, I went to Mexico and had this procedure done because it was cheaper, or I went to Panama, or what, you hear about the people like that. But then I read Tony Robbins' book a few years ago, Lifespan, and he talks a lot about traveling out of the country to get things done, because whether it's in like, okay, well, I can go be a patient in this trial that is safe, and it's like, and he's getting all the research from the investor level, like somebody who's investing is telling him like, oh, go over here and get your shoulder taken care of by this trial that's going on that I invested in. Some of us don't have that knowledge, but it's still proof that like these things are legitimate. They're not, you're not going to another country and going to a, behind a bar doctor situation where you're like, this is legitimate. These are things that they're just cutting out the bureaucracy piece of it, but everything else is top level.
Yes. Agree. I mean, the regulatory agencies in some countries in Latin America are considered reference agencies in Latin America and in the world. For example, the Pan American Organization it's called PAHO, Pan American Health Organization, actually, which is part of the World Health Organization. PAHO categorizes the level of sophistication of the different regulatory agencies, and they have different levels: 1, 2, 3, 4. Level 4 meaning FDA level, COFEPRIS in Mexico level, INVIMA Colombia level, Brazil ANVISA level, and Argentina ANMAT level. I mean, these are top agencies that other countries around them use as a reference to learn best practices, etc.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scientific rigor, there is regulatory rigor and ethical rigors, because there are international guidelines. They are called good clinical practice guidelines. That set the tone on or the rules on how investigators conduct research ethically, with quality, etc.
And that's something that, for those companies that are trying to create something and get it to market, like being able to go and say, to bring it back to the US or to bring it to one of those bigger companies and say, no, but this was the testing was above board. The testing was
exactly.
Right? It's like, okay, here's the results, and it wasn't, it gives more credence to it versus just, somebody's got a like, oh, I just made this up on a spreadsheet and here's your information, right? Like,
yeah. I just went to Haiti and got a couple of people off the street and just did some testing. No. I mean, you want to say to your investors, you want to say to your potential buyers, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, you want to say to the FDA, listen, I did 10 patients in Panama, in Colombia, in Mexico. The IRB, the Institutional Review Board that reviews the ethical part of the study, is above board. Everybody's trained in international ICH, GCP guidelines. Everybody has those qualifications. There is a committee. They have reviewed and approved 100 studies before. I mean, these are experienced committees. The regulator is a level 4 agency that ensures quality of data. They approved the study. We got a legal importation permit to get the devices legally into the country. We didn't bring the devices in our suitcase, in our backpack on the American Airlines flight to Mexico City. So that's how you ensure that to your investors or your stakeholders that you are doing things right.
And so is it more startups doing this, or are the big companies also doing this?
Well, a lot of the startups do it. Both, actually, both. A lot of startups do it, Jerry. Startups do it because they need the speed that a country like Panama or Salvador or Dominican Republic can give them, or Chile too. It's very fast in those countries. The big ones do it for other reasons. The big ones, for example, let's say you are Pfizer. Let's say you got approved for a large phase 3 study in the United States, meaning phase 3 study, meaning it's a large multi-centric study that involves the United States population, and you negotiate a percentage of that population that can come from overseas. And then you want to save money and you want to recruit patients faster, and then you agree with the FDA something like, all right, I'm going to do 30% of the patients from overseas. I'm going to activate 5 sites in Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina, whatever. And they usually do that. Or sometimes they do it because they want to sell the product in that country. Some countries require you to do a clinical trial domestically so that you can sell it domestically, right? Some other countries don't require that. They can rely on foreign clinical data, which is good. But sometimes you wanna get key opinion leaders involved because you wanna sell these breakthrough device or drug. So you take the top 3 hospitals in Brazil, and then you get the key opinion leaders in that therapeutic area, and you finance a study, even though it's already an approved product in the United States or whatever. Even if it is an approved product in the country, relying on foreign clinical data, you cut a deal with these investigators saying, we're going to finance the study. You recruit 1,000 patients. We're going to give them the drug for free. And you document how good the drug is, and you write a paper in the local language, and you present the paper in the local annual meeting of the Cardiovascular Association of Brazil. And then that's how you get traction as a Pfizer, Merck, Novartis trying to sell a product in a country like Brazil. They don't care if the product works in China. They care if the product is proven to work in Brazil. So
Well, and I could see that being a sticking point for some places. Whether it's national pride or wanting to know that, like, okay, well, our people are different from other countries, or also the patient population of, like, okay, well, I trust stuff from our country. I don't trust stuff from other places.
Exactly.
And so I could see that being on multiple levels, something that's important is like what's going on in the current US, like medical, in the healthcare system, and currently how it's being shaken up and everything. Do we see this becoming something that is increasing overseas clinical trials with this to speed it up and to help, or are doors going to be opening up in the US to where it's like, okay, people can start doing these in the US?
That's a great question. I think it's too early to tell, Jerry. And I've been speaking with a lot of people in the industry, and everybody's kind of on waiting mode to see what's going to happen. It's too early. However, historically, about 50% of trials happen overseas. If you look at clinicaltrials.gov, which is the database that I suggest your audience to look if they're interested in exploring clinical trials domestically or internationally, you're going to see the stats, and usually about 50% are done overseas for XYZ reason. But yes. There's always a room. There's always an industry overseas, for trials.
And it's typically like this, like there's a top 10 countries to go to for that, for people that are looking at it and like, okay, these are my go-to.
Yes, of course. Really depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at early stage research, like very innovative, very breakthrough research, that doesn't always happen in the United States. For example, we just had a client, a sponsor of a clinical trial, who did a study in Panama recently. It's a company out of Boston. It's a spin-off of Harvard Labs. So even a startup in Harvard
Yeah.
needs to go overseas. Imagine
Right.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
you would think that, no, I mean, you are in Boston, the best
Right.
place in the world for medical innovation. You're at
Yeah.
Harvard, where you have all these resources,
Yeah.
and they couldn't even do the first in human at
Yeah.
Harvard, in
Yeah.
Boston, in the United States. They had to go to Panama.
Yeah.
I mean, the company is called ASOFT. It's public information. It's in the public domain. They're working on these impressive brain-computer interface. BCI is
Hmm.
similar to the Neuralink that Elon Musk is working on.
Yeah.
He's implanting on, I think, 3 patients or something. They're working on very similar technologies.
Yeah.
And we did our second set of cases in Panama very recently, about a month ago. And so it's been a wonderful experience for the company. The
Yeah.
investigator are thrilled to be part of the study. They published a great paper on a top journal.
Hmm.
So these type of things do not always happen in the United States. It happens in Panama, Mexico, Colombia, etc.
Right. Right. And I'm assuming part of that too, like, because we talked about the financial difference of doing something over there, both from the cost to actually get it done, but also speeding up the timeline,
Yes.
and saving money from that standpoint. Are like I would think a lot of the startups that are getting involved in this are coming out of colleges,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So somebody's doing
Absolutely. Most of
research
them.
and they're finding something. They're like, oh wait, hey,
Ex-
I got to take this.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Usually the cycle starts with NIH funding being put in a lab inside
Yeah.
a university,
Yeah.
and that lab develops something, and either a molecule or an e-device, and that university has something called, oh, well, that research translates into an intellectual property. You have to
Right.
patent the research.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no point.
Yeah.
And I mean, writing paper is not the metric. It's not the
Right.
end game. The end
Right.
game is to have an approved patent.
Right.
And because that's really where the money is for the university and the investor and the inventor.
Yeah.
So the university usually has, Jerry, something called a Office of Technology Transfer.
Hmm.
Office of Technology Transfer. And their job is to find entrepreneurs, companies, whatever, who are interested in licensing the technology, the intellectual property,
Yep.
and bring it to market somehow.
Yeah.
So they sign a contract with some royalties, licensing agreements, whatever,
Yeah.
and then they go out on the street, they create a company, startup, they build a team around the company, they get the top minds in that field,
Yeah.
and they raise some funds, different rounds,
Hmm.
and then they sell the company. But
Right.
it usually starts at a university.
Yeah. Okay. And then like, so, and this is y'all started with more of a cardiology and cardiac sort of mindset, just because that's where your brother and
Yes.
Dr. O'Neill were,
Yes.
but y'all deal with anybody in the medical, right? Anything that's going on.
Anything, yes, yes, of course. As you said, we started in cardiology because it was organic for us,
Right.
and then we got a call from a neurology company, and then we got another call from an ophthalmology company. You know, the
Yeah.
word gets around, and
Right.
people start learning about the work that we do, and yeah, now we're involved or we have experience probably in 7, 8 different therapeutic areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just like the amount of stuff that's coming. Have you been surprised by something? You're like, oh my gosh, wow, y'all created what? Like, have you
Yes.
been surprised by something? It's been like, whoa.
Yeah, all the time. All
Yeah.
the time. That's one of the fun things about working in this field. Every study is different because every technology is different. And by the way, I usually speak with investors for XYZ reason in social settings or in conferences.
Right.
And usually or you read articles about the topic, and usually the number is, out of 100 pitches that they receive, they finance one company.
Right. Right.
So the innovation has to be so breakthrough
Yeah.
that there is a huge filter
Right.
to make sure that what gets developed is something that the market really needs and deserves the funds from the
Right.
investor.
Yeah.
So pretty much all medical innovation that go across my desk, are usually breakthrough technologies. I mean, fascinating stuff like the one that I just described from Harvard. It's an implant in your head that can pretty much read your mind. I mean, it
Yeah.
reads the signals, the electrical
Right.
signals in your brain, and can activate different things in the outside world.
Wow.
I was just reading the news today. Apple is developing a BCI, a brain-computer interface for people with disabilities to control
Right.
iPhones.
Right.
So this is a emerging
Yeah.
field in medical innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are many other ones, but yeah, it's exciting. Every day is
Yeah.
different. Uh,
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's something that from an investor standpoint, I could totally see that being like, oh, wait, this is too close to something else that's already,
Exactly. Yes.
and so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like by the time it gets through with everything, the market can be non-existent for
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The investors usually will ask you, all right, how innovative it is.
Mhm.
Tell me about the problem that is solving.
Right.
Tell me about the solutions. That's usually a pitch.
Mhm.
A pitch is usually 5 slides. You don't need
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 slides. Tell me about the problem, the size of the problem, right? In
Mhm.
money. How many
Right.
patients? How much
Yeah.
money does this represent?
Yeah.
Is it only in the US or is it global, right?
Right. Yep. Yep.
um, tell me about the solutions to this problem. Is
Mhm.
there any solution to this problem, right?
Right.
Why are you the best solution out of all solutions, if there is
Right.
one? If
Yeah.
there is none, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Tell me how much money you need. What are you
Mhm.
going to use with that money? I mean, there are
Sure.
many questions to filter the ideas to make
Yeah.
sure the ideas go through a rigorous process of selection
Yeah.
and funding. And also the other key question, Jerry, is there reimbursement for
Mm.
this product? Because it doesn't make any sense to develop something where insurance companies or Medicare is not going to
Yeah.
pay you for,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So then you're stuck because you
Yeah.
cannot sell something that is so innovative that there is no code for
Right.
reimbursement. Or
Right.
what's your path to get the reimbursement code,
Right.
right?
Right.
And also, what's your path for approval, for FDA approval?
Yeah.
Usually the FDA has different paths.
Mhm.
510K path, which is what you said is a Me Too product, usually similar
Mhm.
to the other ones. So the FDA lets you go through without clinical trials.
Yeah.
There is the de novo path, which is similar to the 510K, low risk products, but that have no predicates. That's the name that
Right.
they give to those products that are similar to yours.
Yeah.
And then there's the PMA. PMA is class 3, high risk devices, pre-market authorization, PMA
Right.
devices, which are usually the devices I usually get involved in because
Right.
they need a clinical trial, because
Yeah.
there's nothing out there like
Yeah.
that. So they need to be tested in humans because nobody has ever tested a technology like that in a human patient.
Right. Right.
So yeah.
And that's and speaking of that, like that's where I know a lot of people talk about like, okay, well, was it an animal trial or was it a human trial or was it a like and yeah, there's some things where you're like, okay, well that how it affected a rat, how does that change like how it helps me, right? Or those
Yeah.
types of things. And so like it is it or I should ask the question, not it is it like from an FDA approval standpoint and from like getting things, through the gate and out into the market in the US, is it better to have that human trial versus an animal trial?
Well, you always in an animal trial. You always in a human trial.
Okay.
I mean, the when you speak with the FDA or with an IRB, an institutional review board,
Hmm.
an ethical committee, they will always ask you for preclinical. Preclinical meaning animal testing.
Right.
Animal testing. And your rationale for picking that model is called an
Mm.
animal model.
Right.
Depending on the device, you choose an animal model, which means you choose the right animal that is closer to a human
Right.
organ. For
Yeah.
example, if you're developing an ophthalmology device, you don't really need a dog or a pig or a horse.
Mhm.
You can get by with a rabbit,
Right.
right? That's your animal model, the
Yeah.
rabbit, because the rabbit eye is similar to the human eye, and you
Mhm.
can extrapolate many things that happen in the rabbit on humans. And you
Right.
can safely say it is presumed to be safe in humans because we did 20 rabbits nothing happened to them, and they're close to our eyes,
Right.
humans.
Right.
If you're working on a cardiovascular device, you wouldn't use a rabbit because the heart is too small. You use a pig,
Right.
50-kilo pig,
Yep.
big pig, big
Yep.
heart that is closer to a human heart.
Right.
And then you replicate everything there before you move into humans.
Right.
Because you need to say to the regulator, to the IRB, that you did all the testing necessary to kind of, with reasonable doubt, say it will be safe in humans.
Right.
We're not going to kill a patient. I mean,
Right.
and this is a very important point. The goal of the first human experience, the goal of the first in human trial, is not for the device to be efficacious. It's for
Right.
the device to be safe. Exactly.
Right.
We're just
Right.
testing safety. If
Yeah.
it works, fantastic, awesome.
Yeah.
But
Right.
we first need, on these 5 patients, 10 patients, we just want to make sure it is safe in a
Yeah.
controlled environment.
Yeah.
If it is safe for these 10 patients, then we move on to the next phase, a second human trial, and that's going to be in the hypothesis, in the protocol, it will have an endpoint. That's a word that we use in the industry, an endpoint for efficacy.
Yeah.
Efficacy.
Yeah. Well, and that's where a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but it happens where somebody's got something they're developing, whether it's a drug or a device, and they go through the trial and then they discover like, oh wait, it also does this.
Yes, that
Right?
happens.
Like we weren't expecting that. We were just,
Yes.
we went to it, we got it to the point where we thought it's safe. Let's go ahead and test it. Let's make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to do, and then go, oh, we weren't expecting the data to come back with this additional
Exactly.
benefit down the
Yes,
road.
that happens a lot. Yeah, and also happens that it doesn't work. We've
Oh
had
yeah.
probably 2 or 3 instances where the device just didn't work. We have to extract the device from the patient, which is
Yeah.
really traumatic for the patient, and also the patients. I mean, it's really bad for patients because they have the hopes of participating in the trial to receive a benefit,
Sure.
and then it doesn't work. They have to be on another surgery. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, too much for a patient.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens too. Sometimes
Yeah.
the device doesn't work. You have to go back to the drawing board. You have to raise more funds. You
Right.
have to do more testing in the lab, more testing in animals.
Yep.
So it's, yeah. But that's the cost that you pay when you innovate. You don't know. I mean, you
Right.
have to,
Right.
yeah, trial and error.
Well,
Trial
and
and
I'm
error.
sure that it also is like, okay, well, it works a little bit, or it works part of the time, but it doesn't work for everybody, right? Like
I'm
that can
sorry,
be an
Jerry.
issue too. Oh,
Jerry.
yep. You there? You there? Oh, no. It's not me. Oh, you're not frozen anymore. You there?
I'm good. I'm here.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So I can cut that out. So don't worry.
Yes, yeah.
Um, but that I can also see where somebody goes and does a trial and maybe it's only 30% effective, right? And so it's
Yes.
like, okay, it works in some instances. If they can't
Yeah.
determine exactly when it works, the investors go, nope, it's not enough,
Of
right?
course, it's not enough. Exactly, exactly. Usually the threshold is 60%. If it is
Okay.
60% effective, then we're good.
Yeah.
But less than that is not acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to go back to the drawing board.
Right.
Yeah.
And how many of those like, die at that point where it's like they can't get enough funds to continue or they can't, and it's like, okay, it's a decent idea, but like
Wow.
it just dies off because nobody can move forward.
A lot of them die for all
Yeah.
the reasons I just described. A lack
Yeah.
of funding, it doesn't work. Um, whatever reason. I mean, probably 90% or more
Oh
don't
wow.
go through the
Yeah.
don't have an exit. That's
Yeah.
really what you need. I mean,
Yeah.
your goal is an exit. Exit
Right.
meaning it's a financial terminology.
Yep.
Exit meaning you're gonna get acquired or you're gonna get an IPO,
Yep.
an initial public offering,
Yeah.
because that's the liquidity event
Mhm.
that investors need.
Right.
I mean, yeah, right? You
Yeah.
invest a
That's
million
why they play the
dollars.
game.
Exactly. That's why they play
Yeah.
the game.
Yep. Yep. And I read something about like, investors are, they'll invest, like you said, 1 out of 100 pitches, but they're not expecting every one of those to be,
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
golden ticket. It's like, okay, if I can just make my money back off of every one of them and then have 1 out of 10 hit it big, then I'm good.
Yes. That's what people say in people call in the industry spray and pray, right?
Yep.
You spray investments in different companies and you pray that one of them make it really,
Yep.
really big, becomes
Yep.
a unicorn or something like that.
Right.
Or get
Yeah.
acquired for $1 billion.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Which
Yep.
happens. I mean, Medtronic, Boston
Oh
Scientific
yeah.
have bought companies for billions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and and that's the kind of stuff that I think is driving people. Like, yes, they've got the, okay, I want to help people and I've got that piece of it. But when it gets to those hard days where it's like, okay, I just can't figure out why this isn't working. It's supposed to do this and it's not returning that. Like, yeah, they've got that piece of like, I'm trying to build something to help somebody, but there's also that financial benefit of like,
Yeah.
okay, when this works, I can see this changing more lives than just the patients.
Oh yes, yes, that's very true. Yeah, and usually my clients are generally good people. I mean,
Mhm.
they really want to help people.
Yeah.
They really want to see somebody with a smile on their face.
Right.
And I see them. I mean, I see patients when they get into the OR, we implant something, and then they come out of it with a different smile, different
Hmm.
attitude because we are changing their lives.
Yeah.
And also, Jerry, something that we haven't mentioned is why is it easier to recruit patients outside of the United States?
Oh
Because
yeah.
it doesn't serve you any good to get a trial approved in Colombia tomorrow if you're not able to recruit patients,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So it's not only speed on the approval process, but it's also speed in recruitment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the answer to that is because in developing economies, it also happens in Canada, from what I understand.
Hmm.
They have healthcare systems that are managed by the government, public
Right.
healthcare systems.
Yep.
And most of the population are part of these healthcare system or receive
Hmm.
healthcare, I mean, care benefits through that system.
Yeah.
So you have to wait in line. You have to call the call center to make an appointment.
Right.
They make you wait for hours, or you have to stay in line, like it happens in Colombia. I've seen patients at 5 in the morning
Yeah.
waiting until the pharmacy opens at 8,
Yeah.
so that they can receive the government
Hmm.
subsidized medication.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have a high cost procedure that I mean you're diagnosed with
Hmm.
something that requires a high cost procedure, they delay the procedure for a year or two,
Hmm.
hoping that you die because
Right.
it's cheaper. I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds sinister, but it's
Right.
true.
Yeah.
I mean, then you have to file a lawsuit if
Yeah.
you have the financial means to pay an attorney.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so it's just difficult for the regular Joe on the streets to
Yeah.
have access to the system and to be treated with dignity.
Yeah.
So you come as a sponsor of a clinical trial and offer the patient an alternative. You
Yeah.
offer them to be part of a clinical research study where they're going to be treated with dignity. They're going to have
Right.
access to the healthcare system very fast. We're going to get all the tests that that patient needs done today,
Yeah.
not waiting 6 months.
Right.
And we're going to bring the patient on an Uber with a family member. We're going to give them meals until they
Yeah.
wait for 3, 4, 5 hours at the hospital doing all these battery of tests,
Yeah.
right? So we just treat them nicely and
Right.
they're happy and they have the cell phone of the study coordinator, they have the cell phone of the investigator, they
Yeah.
have an informed consent that has the phone number of the insurance company that is, if anything happens, they call insurance company and they pay
Right.
them a compensation. So makes a big difference for a patient
Oh
in
yeah.
Latin America to be part of the study.
Yeah.
It
Well,
changes their
and
lives.
and and just mentioning that, I was talking to a doctor yesterday, and he had a family member that went and did part of his training for medical school and residency. I don't know exactly what he was over there for, but in China,
Okay.
and um, he was comparing. He was like, some people complain about the U.S. and how you only get so much time with your doctor and
Hmm.
da 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 da. And he was like, doctors in China, like you're given 2 to 4 minutes with a patient,
Wow.
and they're expected to see 120 patients a day.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, could you imagine? Like, and so when you said that, I was like, that popped in my head. Like, yeah, if you're a person in that situation and somebody says, "Hey, I have an option. It might work, it may not, but are you willing to go through with this? It doesn't cost you anything." I could see that, yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Here I
Doesn't
can
cost
see
you
it's like
anything, and you have access. Yes. Yes.
people in the
Yes.
US are like, oh, a little skeptical,
Exactly. People in the US, they don't really need to be part of a
yeah,
study, but in Latin
yeah,
America, they kind of need to. Yeah.
right.
They kind
Yeah,
of need to. Yeah.
yeah. So,
So,
um,
yeah. And also, Jerry, the options are in the US are immense. I mean, the
oh,
FDA
sure.
approves 20,000 new devices and drugs every day.
Yeah,
In Latin America, you only have a few options. So a
right.
study is a great option because you're
Yeah,
receiving something that is not available in your country.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's yeah, I mean it's all the benefits for both sides are there,
Yes, exactly.
right? And so it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like a no-brainer as to like, why wouldn't you do this if you're in that
Yes,
position? Because
exactly.
it benefits
Yeah.
everybody. So,
Yeah.
well, Julio, I want to be mindful of your time, and I want to thank you for joining us. How can people like that are interested in one way or another of what's going on with bioaccess? How can they follow along what y'all are doing?
Just go to the website or find me on LinkedIn or
Okay.
just Google me.
Yeah.
Bioaccess LA for LatinAmerica.com, bioaccessla.com, or just go to LinkedIn, Julio Martinez-Clark. You're going to be able to find me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I have over 30,000 followers.
Nice.
I am always posting something.
Yeah.
And also Google me because I'm always on podcasts and I write
Right.
articles and
Yeah.
my name is all over Google. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, again, I appreciate it. Like it's been very enlightening and helpful, and I think people are going to understand a little bit more about what's going on, sort of behind the scenes in this. How do things get developed, and how do they go through, and
Yes.
why it's important that it's like it's okay that things are done outside the U.S.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
reasons behind it that are beneficial. So
Absolutely. You're
yeah,
right. Yeah.
I
All right,
appreciate
Jerry.
your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.